This is the random card I picked just for the sake of having the information here for us. We reach Way to Eden. This episode gets a really bad rap, and I don't think it deserves it. So maybe I'll sleep on that and put a little something together about how much I enjoy this episode so much, because it had good intentions. And I think those intentions are still there, and they're worth discussing, and there are many lessons to be learned from it that the presentation may get in the way of. But it's still a fun episode. Here's the write-up you can read as I look for a card today. Last couple bouts have not been successful. Too deep into it. My strengths I have discovered in these 10 episodes, or should I just call them rounds? Really good with TOS, and really good with most of Next Gen. And the movies, very solid. The specifics with DS9 and Voyager, I've been challenged, but we'll see. So, I'm going to look at a couple cards right here. I'm going to look from the deck that I had the most success with here. These Star Trek trivia game questions. Gary Mitchell card. This is from the second pilot of TOS, Where No Man Has Gone Before. SIC. The atmosphere of the ship. The design, how the ship looks before it was polished. I like the old view screen from the cage and from the second pilot. I like these uniforms. The collars are pretty appealing. I wish they stuck with those. Hey, the females got to wear pants. These early episodes are trying to find themselves because of the unrealized potential and going the particular ways they went. But Gary Mitchell. I like Spock with the phaser rifle. You have a backstory that we go in with, where Kirk brings his old friend and academy buddy along as the navigator, but not his first officer. Perhaps so I can have some direction, we can flip the card over and see what questions will be asked. And Spock, as he reaches, will guide us through these questions. Okay, so yes, I answered this. He was the navigator in this episode. He sat on the right side. And Kelso was the helm. And in the pilot, we had Sulu there in blue as the astrophysicist. And he gave the great... okay, well, because I couldn't balance the card, yes, it's navigation. But Sulu gave the great piece of advice about Mitchell getting these abilities. And the analogy he used was start with a penny, multiply it by 2 each day. Within a month, you'll be a millionaire. I'm sure some folks on YouTube are hoping that will happen to them, too. An early conference scene we see in Trek that we will see many more of. It teaches us about getting through meetings and bouncing ideas off one another. And you can see, although Next Gen gets a lot of flack from so many meetings, we can see how valuable they are from the get-go. We saw it in the cage as well, but we see it here where they're discussing what's up with Mitchell and what is the threat. So Gary Mitchell, of course, the actor whose name escapes me, like all actors and producers' names seem to escape me unless they're on the main cast. I know the name of the other lead in 2001: A Space Odyssey. I can't quite pronounce the last name off the cuff right now. Gary Mitchell, the actor who played Gary Mitchell, also in 2001 as Frank Poole, who meets an untimely end. And communications. Did we have a communication officer in the second pilot? I'm sure we did. I remember a white earpiece, but I could be also thinking that's in the cage. It's not coming to me. So Not getting them all on this one. All right, so that's question number 1. He was the navigator. Didn't have much going on in the navigation panel. It was, I mean, you could eat lunch off of it. It was more like a table, but at the time. And I don't think they had the nifty chairs yet. They were still using the chairs from the cage, which were a little small. They didn't have that swoof back to them. One of Gary Mitchell's teachers at the academy. Well, it was Kirk, right? We were a bit. We don't know the specifics. It almost seems like he's a graduate student at the academy. Obviously, it's the second episode of the show. We don't have a Starfleet Academy Bible. We don't know if it's a university or not, or if it has a graduate school. But let's just see that Kirk was one of the TAs for some class. And this is what we forget about Kirk and just the legend of what Kirk is. And I'm stealing from Ron M. Moore's analysis that he's done on some DVD extra or commentary. But Academy Kirk and TOS was a real stick in the mud. Not a really nose to the grindstone. And then gradually, as he becomes captain, you see this kind of risk-taking Lothario, which is odd because that's the opposite dynamic of Picard. Picard begins as we've seen in Tapestry. Look at an earlier round on my views on Tapestry. We see Picard as the risk taker, or the one not taking into account of what goes on, and gradually he becomes kind of a stodgy captain, at least in the first couple years of TNG. So the Kirk Picard compare and contrast, you see their backgrounds take, or at least personalities take different, flip the aspects is what I'm attempting to get to. So this kind of answers one of Mitchell's ideas that Kirk was one of the teachers. I could be wrong. He could have mentioned a particular name at the academy. I don't think so. Yes, so yeah, it was Kirk. Stay away from Lieutenant Kirk's classes. He'll do something. I don't know if that's before or after Mitchell uses telekinesis to grab the water from the itty-bitty water spout that this happens to be in sickbay. That was beautiful. Okay. So a little psychoanalysis on Kirk and Picard in their early days. Now, of course, we don't see this Kirk's portrayal in the 2009 movie, because by that point we're developing a story based on an idea that is set in the public mindset of who Kirk is, so we really don't see that development. And maybe the third movie of the bunch attempts to pull back on that and see a more mature portrayal of Kirk, but I'm going to let that go for now. So there's still, in the first season, there's still that stick in the mud Kirk, as he's gradually becoming the risk taker, don't call Starfleet Kirk. So there's still trying to find the character, and there's no contradiction here. Individuals can be many things. Now Dave Goodman, I think his name's Dave Goodman, I know must be the last name. Anyway, the autobiography of Kirk has its moments. I think it spends a lot of time on Kodos the Executioner, and yeah, that would have an impact. Also, one of the early Discovery novels. There are only like 6 or 7 now, but maybe the second. Second novel deals with Kodos as well. You can read those two together to get a larger view of how others have interpreted the impact that Kirk surviving Kodos has on the personality. That could definitely play in here. I, of course, digress. Okay, we're back to the second pilot. Let's see what the next issue is. On which planet? Oh, the poison dart. What? I don't know the name of the planet. I know this is the opening to McIntyre's Enterprise on the many times I have attempted to read it over the years. And maybe I should just sit down and force myself to do it, but this is the opening scene. Who knows what the planet's called? If it's not coming to me now, no. Well, if I can't think the name of the planet, let's try to find the number. Because at least we know it's not Planet Q. That's always my favorite one. What was Planet Q? Was that not coming to me? Another early one. Not Naked Time, was it? No, I don't know the name of the planet. I let myself down. Poisonous Start. But let's call it like 4. I mean the number after the planet, like Denebian 4, something like Denev. No, Denev is something else. So nope, this doesn't even register. Demoris. Man. Okay, really going through these real quickly today. Gary Mitchell mutated into a godlike being after. It's funny. So I'm doing this show right after. I don't know what episode are they on Discovery Season 4, where they finally mention the Galactic Barrier. These are the star charts. I think these came out in 2002 or 3. These came out in 2002. And I want to show you how they portray the Galactic Barrier. Alright, so here's the deal. There's a Great Barrier and there's a Galactic Barrier. Okay? So the outside of the galaxy has a Galactic Barrier. And the Great Barrier you will find on the inside of the galaxy. So the Great Barrier is from Star Trek V. That's where Sybok wants to go to meet God. And I think he just meets Kim Peck. I don't know who played. No, it was Admiral from Best of Both Worlds, right? He played the face of God for a while. So that's where Shakari is. That's inside the Great Barrier, in the middle of the galaxy, so-called. As impossible as that might be to get to, maybe just as impossible as the same ship in an earlier time going to the Galactic Barrier. Anything outside the Galactic Barrier is outside the galaxy. Discovery Season 4 is having some issues with some kind of life form outside the Galactic Barrier, not necessarily the Great Barrier. So there's the two. That's what you can learn from. I'm sure you could find it online. I still like the books. There's the star charts. Now, back to our questions. So, in going to the Galactic Barrier, and that's what we found with the survivors of the SS Valiant, which we don't see the ship, we just see a recorder marker. And for some reason we have to go to red alert because you beamed a recorder marker on board. But hey, it's early. We're still trying to figure out who we are. But yeah, not just Mitchell, but Mitchell gets the brunt of it. The other is Dr. Daner. Gets hit with this kind of energy, effect, and of course, he's known for the eye, the contacts that make the eyes all glassy or diamond-like. So yeah, it's when you get hit, when you go through the Galactic Barrier. See, it's so. Thanks, Shatner, for Star Trek V. Although that should be reevaluated too in some way, shape, or form. I've got some ideas on Star Trek V over the years. Perhaps another dive on that would be worthwhile. But yes, the Galactic Barrier. Nope. Exposure to radiation at the edge of the galaxy. So I guess the writers are calling it radiation at the edge of the galaxy. What do you think, Spock? Yep, Spock still reaches. So say we all. All right, that's my 2 cents on the Galactic Barrier. And we go back to the Galactic Barrier again, and is it by any other name? That's the episode where... what are they called? But they turn everybody into styrofoam cubes. That's crazy. And then Scotty gets one of them drunk off the Aldebaran whiskey. Of course, we don't know that it's Aldebaran whiskey at the time. We learn that later in Next Gen Relics. Fine episode. And we had the Scotty card in that episode where I just fell apart. That's always a fun one to watch. That's on Schisms. All right. Lower Decks did a fine tribute to the Gary Mitchell episode, which is a lot of. I think that's maybe their first or second episode in the second season. That's worth a view. A lot of fun with that one. All right. Hey, Gary Lockwood is his name. Thanks, question. I love it when the questions answer my previous questions. And as I've stated, this is 2001: A Space Odyssey, and the character of Frank Poole comes back in Clarke's 3001, the final Odyssey novel. It's a quick read. I remember reading it when it came out in like maybe 97. I don't really know how it concludes in any particular way, but it was that's probably worth a revisit. But somehow Poole did a Buck Rogers and managed to freeze himself. I don't know the reason why. It doesn't matter. It's just to bring Poole back and to look at the world 1,000 years later from the 2001 perspective. And when we talk about continuity, Clarke was a big one for not looking at his series of books as a sequel to the previous one. That way he could, just push aside any continuity errors and just look at it from a particular perspective that can be enjoyed. That gets back to the timeline, multiverse stuff that we can have a lot of fun with. And again, Nick Meyer's Star Trek II commentary, on those of us that still have physical media available to view those or listen, discusses continuity in terms of the Sherlock Holmes stuff, where one author can mess up the details and then realize that maybe they're not as important as we thought it was. We don't want it to get in the way of the storytelling. I digress. So yeah, 2001. All right, and that is our card for today. Yeah, I think I've done enough. We talked about the Great Barriers. We went through some basic questions about the second pilot. I like it. I always think it's a good one to watch again and again. I'm watching early episodes of Deep Space Nine or Voyager. I'm still enjoy the potential of a show not quite finding itself yet, and before it gets kind of into a rut. Not that those shows necessarily got into a rut, but there were some established things that happened with the characters that you don't necessarily see in earlier episodes. I suppose that's a criticism in Voyager because what they did not do with the Maquis and so on and so forth. But again, like everything else, that's a springboard to a discussion for another time. But go ahead and watch the first. Keep calling it the second pilot, which of course you've got to hunt for, because I'm not sure, even with streaming, I'll have to check if this gets to the question of when you deal with TOS. When I grew up, when it was still on VHS, they were made in production order. They were syndicated in production order. So we began with Where No Man Has Gone Before and not The Man Trap. That's my preferred method of viewing, but we've switched things around now for some reason to look at original air date order, which I'm still not on board with. So what this ends up is episode 4 on air date order. So just go looking for it. It's in the first season. It's a fun one to watch. Hey, I'm gonna end the show for today.